Welcome to our Indicio Identity Community event for July. Today, we are very, very excited. Our topic is about open source Bifold digital wallet and the potential for agents to revolutionize the internet. Our speaker today, we have James Iry, mobile tech lead at Indicio, and Sam CURREN, agent architect from Indicio. So Indicio, we are organization to help you build solution using a decentralized identity. And this is the community to talk about decentralized identity. So we welcome anyone to join. You don't have to know anything about decentralized identity. That's why we are here for. And we'd like you to bring your friends next time. Without further ado, why don't we introduce James and Sam? James?
Hi, I'm James Iry. I'm the mobile tech lead at Indicio, and we've got a lot of cool projects going on here, and I'm going to be presenting on our Bifold project that we're involved in the community.
And Sam CURREN here. I'll be following up after James presents and talking about the potential to change everything. So it'll be good.
Awesome. Let me go ahead and share my screen and get started. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we see it.
Awesome. Just going to walk, what I want to do is walk through what are the motivations behind the Aries Bifold project and kind of go through some of our goals and do a short demo of where we're at currently. So our big thing that we wanted to do with the Bifold project was to create a community around an open source mobile library. We found that React Native is going to help us broader the developer community that's actually using SSI. And we really wanted to build this community to give us a good mobile app and basis for building our mobile apps, because this is a bit of an area that has had less focus so far from the community from our point of view. So we've wanted to create a community to help make this project actually happen and move forward. And I think one of the things that we wanted to do here was also give us a place to test solutions and ideas that are not necessarily possible with other solutions given their nature. So our main goals here were to establish a community. That was our top priority here. Provide a widely usable production-ready open source mobile agent and associated tools. And we wanted to focus on the UI and UX experiences with this project to help address problems that have gone unaddressed and or better the user experience. And some of the solutions that are present are built by engineers. I am one of them, but one of our goals there is to better that angle. And we want to be able to provide a project that allows the community to tinker and experiment with new ideas and capabilities. Given it being an open source project, this allows people to, it offers flexibility to what they can do with it. And then also importantly, we wanted this to be an interoperable project within the community so that it can work with within the community and not be a blocker. Our current status, we're working towards a initial 0.1 release. We're currently at an Android and iOS feature parity. And these are a couple of our main goals here of being able to establish a connection, receive a credential, and then present that credential. We want to be able to do revocation and do messaging in the form of basic messaging. In the future, we would want to do a more rich messaging protocol, but that's a future endeavor. And we also wanted to be able to do coordinate mediation, and this would be with this is adding a specific protocol to allow us to use Octopi as a mediator. And then I've also mentioned here the Redux store that this is providing some UI capabilities on top of the Aries JavaScript framework. So this is our current status. And I figured I would jump into a demo here. So let me go ahead and do that. So I've pulled up the Aries toolbox here with a Octopi running behind it. And I have launched the Bifold app on my Android device, and I'm screen sharing that here. So we're in the process actually of a UI update, but as we currently have here, we will go through the brief registration steps. We need to, at this stage, create a PIN. To authorize the wallet. And now I'm going to go ahead and connect, scan and connect to my Alice agent here. If we come in here, we can see that this connection has become active. And I've already generated a credential, a schema and credential definition. And I'm going to go ahead and issue that to the app, to John Doe here. This is a fairly simple schema and cred def, but serves the purpose it was made for. So we can see that this came from Alice, and we can see the details of the credential. We'll go ahead and claim that. And at this point, this is now in our wallet. And it's a fairly brief demo, but that's the extent of where the app is now. We have, we are close on being able to do presentations. There's not actually too much more to do there in order to enable that capability. It's mostly a time commitment. So making forward progress on that front. Any questions on the demo? Awesome. So briefly wanted to go over what the tech stack looks like here, just to give some context to what the platform looks like here. So it's built within React Native. And the Aries mobile agent in React Native, this is what provides some of the data components and default UI components. The Aries Bifold app is what you're able to clone and white label. Aries Framework JavaScript is what we're actually using as the framework for our agent and the basis. And then the Indie SDK React Native, which was previously our Indie SDK, is what's allowing us to use libindie within a React Native context. So short to medium term goals, there's a bunch here, but essentially we want to be able to have basic functionality and then start moving towards newer and exciting things such as AIP 2.0 support, machine readable governance, multi-ledger support, import, export, etc. So we have lots of exciting things on the roadmap. And Sam is going to be covering a bit more of the longer term goals. Any questions on these goals as listed here? Awesome. And then these are the project links, and I can post these in the chat as well, so you can find those. But that is what I have to present today. So if there's any questions for me, happy to answer, but we'll likely turn it over to Sam in just a second here. Awesome. Sam, why don't you take it away?
Awesome, James. Thanks for that. It's nice that there's software that actually does stuff instead of just being an idea or stuff we're working on. There's important work that goes on in libraries and things like that, but it's really nice to see stuff actually happen, which is pretty great. So, okay, give me a second here while I set up my screen share here. I want to talk a little bit about, does that look good? Does everyone see my screen here?
Yep.
Perfect. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, sometimes I spend a lot of time in the weeds. I'm heavily involved in the areas in the DIDComm working groups, and we spend a lot of time working on very specific things. And I wanted to talk today and back up a lot and to talk about the grand vision of what we're doing, because I don't think we talk about that enough. I think that sometimes we forget our place in the weeds because we're trying to work out the important little details, but we don't really consider the larger implications of what's going on. And so what I want to talk about today is the power that agents have to completely revolutionize the internet. And so I have some stuff to go through here to talk about both agents and the underlying technologies that I believe will have a profound effect on our lives moving forward, as long as we execute and do this correctly. So first, I need to start with a super brief history of the internet. Apologies to James Iry, who produced the brief, incomplete, and mostly wrong history of programming languages. And I've borrowed a little bit of his style here to set the stage for what we need to talk about. In the beginning, there was email on the internet, and everyone was a peer because you had an email address and you would email other people with email addresses, and so people were peers on the internet. Mail servers played a role. But they basically acted to shuttle email messages back and forth between people who were the main people who were interacting on the internet. We got the web, right? HTML became a thing, and everyone is a publisher, and lots of the early platforms that were oriented that way to help everyone publish on the internet. And at this point, there was e-commerce and things were emerging, but it still wasn't really the dominant thing. And so being on the web means that you had a homepage and you had things to show and you had stuff to share with people. And we were still very much peers at this phase. And Web 2.0 came along, and a number of things happened there. One of them is that publishing became centralized. Rather than setting up your own homepage or your own domain or anything like that, you would sort of get space on someone else's platform in order to publish stuff. And part of that is that those platforms organize social graphs. You could follow people, or you could like people, like their posts, etc. And you gradually helped them establish what your social network was, and they would use that to help you and display the stuff from your social network that you needed. And the important transition that happened right about here is that people became second-class citizens on the internet, rather than being the primary people oriented around email or publishing themselves or sort of being a peer. People became second class in the sense that they needed to be granted a presence on the internet by a first class citizen, which became large, dominant, mostly social media companies. And this is still technically not necessarily true, but practically it's true. I can still, as an individual, go get a domain, set up a WordPress, blog, and or I'm picking examples here, and fill anything in that you want to. But I can still do that, and I can still be that. The problem is that the vast majority of all our interactions online are that way, and it's to the point now where even if I want to publish on my own blog, if I want to see the things that other people are sharing, family and friends or business associates or whatever, I generally have to end up on one of those platforms, be it Facebook or LinkedIn or one of those things. And so this is the important transition that I think was a negative step in the future of the internet, is that we have ended up in this relationship that has created that. Smartphones have reinforced this because of sort of the underlying technical architecture of cell networks, et cetera. The first class, second class distinction is really is reinforced by this. I have an app on my phone that communicates with a server, and it has to do that because you can't generally send something over the internet directly to my phone. It has to go through some other thing. There's a notable exception of SMS here, which I'll get back to in a minute. So smartphones have reinforced that first class, second class distinction. IoT is very similar. It's too hard, apparently, for people to configure their own IoT devices. So when you buy generally an IoT device, it connects through your internet connection to an online server, and then you are granted access to that information or the utility of it through an online server. And again, we are second class citizens in this arrangement, and that's been reinforced. The end, that's where we are. Okay, we're still here. So Web 3.0 was kind of the effort to make everything semantically rich. There has been progress there, but I feel confident in saying that we never really got to Web 3.0, and even though lots of improvements have been made. So here we are. We're still second-class citizens on the internet, and I don't think that's a good thing. I think that it limits all sorts of important technological and social things that I think could be happening that aren't because of this. So HTTP is a protocol led to Web 2.0. The HTTP has the concept of a client and a server. My browser is generally the client, and the web server provides content to my browser, and that's sort of how that's oriented. And so in order for me to publish sort of in the Web 1.0 land, you needed to be able to put stuff on a web server, and that was made easier by Web 2.0, but then we ended up with the circumstances that we are. The point I want to make here is that protocols promote outcomes. In a similar way, for those of you that are programmers, different programming languages tend to produce different types of code. They sort of naturally promote a coding style, and you can fight that, but by and large, that's the language that you're looking at will help you understand the type of code that you're going to get. For example, Ruby tends to produce syntactic magic, where you have to like really dig in to figure out what's going on. Perl, I joke, promotes write-only code. You can write Perl really efficiently, but reading Perl is really hard language, a really hard thing to do. And Java tends to promote implementation factory implementations, right? So I want to draw that same parallel. Hopefully, I've equally offended everyone in my previous couple of claims here. But protocols lead to an outcome of the types of things that those protocols are actually used for. And I believe that HTTP led us to Web 2.0. I said that already. So if we're going to change this and allow us as humans to use smartphones to become first-class citizens on the internet, we need a different way to communicate. We need a protocol that helps us to promote the types of communication that get us what we want. We want an outcome. We need to find a protocol that helps us to get there. And I'm claiming that that's DIDComm. Now, we can discuss about what that is and why that is. We're going to do that a little bit here today. And this is not the only contender in the space that's trying to do these sorts of things, but I believe it's the best for a couple of important reasons. But first, let's talk about the platforms of DIDComm. We start with DIDs. DIDs are created as decentralized identifiers, is what that stands for, to de-acronymize the thing. And DIDs are intended to provide people a way to have an identifier and information linked to that identifier that isn't at the mercy of any single individual or company that wants to make that happen. So many DID methods, for example, are anchored on blockchains where anyone can have a copy of the blockchain to sort of read that data off of it, or some other oracle that allows that to happen. So for our purposes today, the really cool and important things that DIDs give us is a DID document, which contains keys for encryption and signing and service endpoints, also listed in that DID document. And those two things are really, really important because they allow us to communicate and to know, to communicate securely, without other people eavesdropping on our communication, and to know that with confidence that whatever we received came from a particular entity or person. So DIDs is an important foundational thing, which is why it's called DIDComm. Now we have DIDComm. DIDComm itself is a platform for secure protocols. Mediators provide a really useful function that allow it to be mobile friendly, that helps us get around the fact that cell networks and cell phones, by their nature as disconnected devices, aren't something that you can always communicate directly with over the internet. And so there's an important piece there. DIDComm protocols are built upon the foundation of DIDComm. They enable semantically rich communication and time-resilient internet features. I'm going to get to that, back to that in a second as well. Wait, aren't mediator servers? No, mediators are servers even less than email servers are servers in a scenario that we're talking about. They don't read, understand, or act on messages. Most mail servers actually can, unless your email is encrypted, which most is not. They can actually see the text of the messages. Mediators, in the DIDComm sense, are even less capable than that. They facilitate the transfer of messages back and forth, but they don't do anything useful or particularly invasive with those messages. So they're a useful architectural component. They don't play a substantial role along the lines, of course, of like Facebook or any other social media platform or online service. This is important. All agents speak a wide variety of protocols, DIDComm protocols. Mobile agents can speak all the same protocols, and that's on purpose. DIDComm was designed so that the connectivity of the agent did not control the types of protocols that the agent could speak. And that's one of the reasons why there's such a huge impact on mobile agents specifically, because lots of the first-class citizenness of the internet relies on you being able to reliably send or receive information from other parties on the internet. With a different protocol based on DIDComm that supports a foundational protocol that supports the development of all sorts of semantically rich protocols, we get that back. The mobile devices can then again be first-class citizens on the internet. So DIDComm is transport agnostic in the sense that it doesn't care a lot about how the message is actually moved. There are details about how messages are moved over HTTP or over WebSockets or in other ways. But the important part here is that the trust of DIDComm messages and the security of DIDComm messages is based on the message itself, not upon the transport actually used to move it. There's a couple of side effects. One is that as new transports become available or we figure out how to appropriately use them, we don't have to change the trust model about how DIDComm actually works and why we can trust it. The other important thing is that the trust is portable. If I communicate with someone over HTTP and then later over WebSockets, I don't have to trust the messages differently because of the transport that I received it on. And that's an important aspect of doing this because of something that I'll get to in a second. And here it is. Mobile agents are capable of much more than just IP, Wi-Fi, cellular communication, traditional IP-based network communication. We have QR codes that we can display and scan, often to bootstrap interactions. We have Bluetooth and BLE that can do near device interactions in a really neat way. You could be in a cave and have absolutely no internet service anywhere and still be able to communicate effectively with the same trust model in place. NFC is another one that we're exploring and may end up working a little more like QR codes in the sense that you're going to use it to bootstrap something else, or it may be something more rich like Bluetooth or BLE. It depends on how that gets developed and what the capabilities are there. And so mobile devices have more opportunities to communicate between themselves without the internet than agents of other types. If you have an enterprise agent or that represents a company online, or other types of high availability agents, they are typically not in a scenario where you'd want to get close enough to be able to communicate with them over Bluetooth, right? They're in a data center somewhere. But because there's lots of mobile phones, like everywhere, there's a huge opportunity for us to perform lots of these interactions without having to lean on a network like this. Sometimes that's nice for privacy concerns, or sometimes it's technological. You might be in a cave, or you might be at a conference where the mobile network is so saturated that you're unable to leverage it to great use. And these things are solved in this particular way. It's also really nice from a privacy perspective. People trying to evaluate traffic patterns on the internet don't have the opportunity to evaluate the local connection that you're making with someone else over Bluetooth. So what about credentials? We all talk about credentials a lot, and credentials, they dominate the conversation around DIDs and around SSI. But I haven't really talked about credentials yet, right? Are credentials important? Yeah, they are for trust. There's some really useful ways that credentials allow us to transfer into trusted information to other parties, particularly in ways that preserve our privacy, because we can present a credential to a verifier without having them talk to the holder, which gives us a huge layer of trust and a disconnect there that we manage as holders of those credentials. But there's so much more than just credentials in the world of what we can produce with agents that speak DIDComm. And that's the reason I haven't talked about credentials yet. It's good, but we've talked a lot about credentials. I'm back to SMS. I am positing here in a really important way that protocols are much more foundationally important to the future of the internet than platforms are. Email was one of the first protocols ever created on the internet. We still have it. SMS, in a similar way in the mobile sense, was one of the first protocols that we ever created. It's still around. Where's Geocities and Google Wave, right? These are both platforms that existed that were not protocol based, and they've been gone for a long time. I could make a very long list of things that have vanished off the internet, but they're gone, and email and SMS are still around. And that's why I'm positing that protocols are more important than platforms for the future of what we generate. Now, I don't mean that all protocols will exist for all times. There's been the generation of lots of protocols that didn't stick around. There will be lots of protocols built on DIDComm that don't reach sufficient popularity and then go away, either because there's no interest in the thing or because someone invented a better one. And that's good, not bad. The point, though, is that when what you're supporting is a protocol, then the support for the protocol or the operation that it enables is controlled by the people that write software for the protocol, not the owner of the platform. If Google Wave was a protocol, we'd still have Google Wave if people cared enough about it to continue to maintain the code that spoke the protocol. And that puts the hands of the power in the hands of the protocol developers, and not the funding or the control of large platforms that are trying to figure out how to make their place in the world. And that's really, really important. So what kinds of protocols can we have? We've talked about credential exchange protocols a lot, but there's so many, and this is just a very short list. Location sharing is a fantastic protocol. Right now, if you want to functionally and continuously location share, you have to do it either through Apple or probably through Google Maps with other parties that you're working with so that you can share their location. And that's unfortunate that we have to lean on third parties to do that, some of which make lots of money out of selling you ads based on the information that you're willing to share with them. Media sharing is a really useful one as well. You're at a party and you want to share pictures with friends, or you go on a hike and you want to share with the other folks that are there. Messaging, of course, is an obvious one. We already have stuff like basic messaging, but there's so much more that we can do with that. Fitness tracking and evaluation is another silo thing that exists on the internet that are platform based, not protocol based, right? If I use Strava to pick on a random one, then the information that I provide to Strava that's recorded generally by my phone then becomes, in a way, huge property of Strava that they can evaluate and that they can use. And there's all sorts of things that are contained in the fine print of the agreements that I have with them about what they can do with that, and the lack of control that I actually have over that. Payments another obvious one, right? We have payment networks that are fairly broad today, but not ones that are super flexible in powerful ways. Not just paying with different methods, be it crypto or something else, but being able to facilitate other types of things in the payment. Like for example, authorization of payment. Can a business provide their employees with the ability to pay for stuff that requires authorization or automatically integrates with expense tracking mechanisms for the business without having to go through sort of these third-party hoops that we currently jump through with most of those things. IoT device interaction is a huge one that I wish was better. I wish that we could, when I bought an IoT device, I was confident that I was the master of that IoT device, that I controlled it, that it was not talking to anyone behind my back, and that I could trust the information coming off of it. Also, that it would continue to work after the producing company shut off their online servers, right? That's a huge concern for the majority, I would argue, of IoT devices that people aren't thinking a lot about is what happens when the light switch manufacturer decides they don't want to run an online server anymore, or they go out of business or something else changes. Because it was a platform, not a protocol, they're subject to these problems. And of course, with IoT devices, home and life automation, that could be cars, that could be interaction, with things around the home, all sorts of things like that. And this is just a small list of the things that we could actually do. There's a huge number of health scenarios. There's a huge number of like coordination and logistics things that this could enable. This is just a very, very small bit of the types of things that are available for our development by leaning on these technologies. Mobile agents, I think, are the single greatest power we have right now to elevate us back to first-class citizens on the internet. And I think that's important. I have a comment here. People without smartphones too. Agents themselves contain the power that we need. But mobile agents, because of their special utility and the fact that they are such not first-class citizens on the internet now, I think contain a greater potential to move the entire ecosystem forward for this. The people without smartphones are also going to benefit by this movement that I believe will be motivated by mobile agents gaining the ability to communicate using protocol first instead of platform first things. There's a variety of use cases. Even from the beginning of my involvement in SSI, it has been there's constantly been use cases that deal with refugees or people that don't have technology, and how we enable the same sorts of technologies to assist them, but without the requirement that they actually contain something like a smartphone. And so this is the really fundamental thing. So James showed a demo of where we are today. We can make connections, and we can receive credentials using the current state of this open source mobile platform. One of the reasons we're developing that and supporting that open source project as Indicio is that we believe that the potential of all of this SSI magic that we're working on is more powerfully realized through mobile agents than they are through all of the other type of agents. They're all important to the overall ecosystem, but the greatest potential lies in the use of mobile agents on smartphones. I can't underline this enough. This is where the opportunity lies, and it's in some sense quite embarrassing that we as an industry have put so little attention to this and have demonstrated so little of the possible magic that is possible here, and we're working to try and change that in the ways that we can. This is a paradigm shift, much like we think of the pre and post internet life. I heard a comedian the other day that talked about, how it was like, oh, it's been, at the time, I think that it was like 15 years since the birth of Google, and it's hard to believe that before Google I didn't research anything ever, right? And that's not entirely true, but it's actually has a lot to do. I mean, it's amazing. Even my father, who's older, comments all the time about how he learned to do something by finding a video on YouTube, right? And the shift about pre-internet and post-internet is remarkable. The same thing is true even in the presence of internet with pre and post smartphone life, right? The difference in making that happen, right? The internet let us get directions anywhere and print them out on a piece of paper, which was a huge improvement over flipping through massive address books and having to construct your own instructions on how to get to someplace in an unknown city, right? Now we have navigation apps on our smartphone that can easily take us there with no prior preparation and not having a printed out thing that we need to follow. The shift is, I believe, is going to be just as profound with the pre and the post smartphone agents and how they help us to interact with the internet and everything around us in our lives. Is there a future for services? I've kind of been a little critical of Strava and Facebook and LinkedIn and these other services. Is there a future for these types of services moving forward? The answer is yes, but it's going to be different. They need to receive our permission to explicitly to receive and evaluate data, because the data will primarily be collected by us and provided to them for their operation. For example, if I want to use an online service that organizes my photos and does facial recognition and groups them by location and other useful things, I can do that, but it will be an arrangement that I explicitly opt into, and then I provide them the data that actually makes that happen. There will also be far more competition for these types of services because of the way that that they'll be able to integrate securely with us in our smartphones. This is a good example of where there's already been a little bit of innovation, but needs to be a heck of a lot more than to really pull off the vision that we have. They can provide insight and advice. I can still send my ride data to Strava and they can still evaluate it. But the payment models are likely going to need to change. And the glaring one is that there's going to be no monetizing of social relationships. Right now, LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and all those, that one of the things they own that they don't really want to release is the relationships that I have with other people on their platform. And the monetization of social, or the holding those social relationships hostage, if you will, is going to be something that massively needs to change. And I believe that there can be I say no ads, that's not entirely accurate here. I think that there can be ad-supported services, but they're likely to be different because of the changing dynamic of the relationship. They can't just shove an ad at me without me receiving it. There has to be different arrangements that I have with the service provider in order to accept ads from them. And I believe that healthier things will emerge there. Will all this be perfect? No. It's going to take us a while to sort of figure this balance out. But clearly, I think we can do better than what we've got now in the Web 2.0 model that was a natural outflowing of relying so much on HTTP as a protocol that dominated the internet. So that's the end of kind of what I directly wanted to present today. It's not the end, it's the beginning, because we're at the very beginning of it. And that's the important bit. I hope that by sharing a little bit of the grander vision here, that I have hopefully inspired or caused you to think or consider things that you might not have before. If you are newly interested in things, I would consider that a successful outcome. I left room at the end on purpose to be able to have some questions, not only about what I've talked about, but about the Bifold project, or generically the state of the industry, where we are or where we ought to be going. And we'd love to engage in that conversation. There's more than just me to help answer those questions or to engage there. Any thoughts or comments that anyone would like to share? Nothing?
Sam, what are the major obstacles you see to holding this revolution back?
Well, that's a really good question, Trevor.
I have an answer.
Yeah, go, Lynn.
Well, I think that that a lot of people are pretty happy with how it works right now, and so changing is going to be tough. People are happy to log in and do all this stuff and let somebody else take care of it all. Just to posit that as in my opinion.
User apathy, Lynn. I think that's a huge one, and I think a lot of people recognize that privacy is not a thing, or maybe they don't, but they also don't care a lot. And I think that we can, as sort of the technology people involved in the internet, I think that we can offer better solutions there. And I think that those will grow in popularity. every time there's a massive security breach somewhere, seems like the secure messaging apps always get a boost of usage because people are willing to consider something new. If we have something ready for them, I think we can overcome that. One of the immediate technological challenges is that everyone likes using HTTP, but no one wants to pay to develop HTTP, right? The investment required in protocols pays out differently than the investment in a platform. And it's easier for business people that are mostly concerned at making a dollar to see the short-term payout of a platform than it is the short-term or the long-term payout of investing something that will provide solid infrastructure on the internet for a long time to come. And so I think that's important because we've got to get to a beginning critical mass before this stuff will continue to gain momentum. So user apathy, I think, is a huge piece. Another aspect of that, Trevor, I think, is that we've got to, and I think the companies that you have in the space right now, I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir because many of you are already involved in the space. The companies that are contributing in the ways that everyone is contributing do so because they see that value of a fundamental change and the benefits that can come from that. Also monetarily, this is not some argument against making money by providing services on the internet, right? This is promoting a better way of doing so, and I actually think there's incredible amounts of money to be made. But in the near term, investment in these things is harder to come by. Is that satisfactory, Trevor? I'm sure that's not a complete list of the obstacles in front of us.
No, but that's interesting. I mean, I think it has to be having it as the backbone to high value uses is a way. I mean, if there was, I'm not sure what the actual technical rationale would be, but sort of what is the mashup? What is the agent mashup with TikTok? Because if there's something that if there's a way of providing value or control there, then I think it'll force everybody to move towards the protocol.
So the TikTok's a good example of sort of a low end spread where it's so easy to have that adoption and the integration that it becomes very, very popular that way. The other strategy is at the opposite end of the spectrum, and this is the Tesla spread, right? The Tesla approach. They first produced a very, very expensive electric sports car, and then as they have expanded it in their sales and everything else, they've moved down the line to the most common cases. And neither one of them is a perfect analogy, I think, for what we need to do, but they're both instructive. One of the is, as much as I like to say that credentials are not the universe, one of the valuable things about credentials is that there are uses of credentials that are relatively high value in our personal lives where we're willing to incur a little bit of personal pain just for the extra benefit or something there, right? I don't know if you've bought or sold a house recently, but the stack of paper you still have to physically sign is actually kind of incredible. And the potential for things like credentials to make those types of things better, I think, even though they are relatively infrequent in our lives, that the amount of power there is one way to sort of gain adoption of these things. And the other thing is the low end. If we can figure out how to do this at the TikTok level, where it's a super thing to casually engage in, but things happen in a better way, that's also a massive way to bring things on. And I don't think those two approaches are mutually exclusive. One of the things that I'm grateful for is enough communities in this industry that are pursuing different aspects and angles of things, because the progress of any of them benefits us as a community as a whole, because of the increased both awareness and the increasing amount of technical expertise that can operate using these technologies, and to make that a huge thing. And so I think that a variety of those approaches can be used to really elevate us to the point where this becomes widespread in a really useful way.
I don't want to take up more time if somebody else has a question, but I do have a follow-up. In light of some of the increasing saber rattling over cybersecurity, what are the kind of security implications that of switching to agent-based protocols or DIDComm as a protocol?
This is going to be interesting because the architecture of DIDComm speaking agents is such that there are far fewer places for the government to go hold up a piece of legal paperwork and gain access to stuff. And so I think that I think there's going to be interesting developments in legal aspects of this, where there may be requirements that impact at the protocol level, right? When you think about email, right, there's when you can't subpoena a protocol, and so they subpoena providers. And when you have a decreased role, even in something like mediators, there's going to be a different way that people actually make that happen. One of the things that I think could be really powerful is, rather than that being sort of implicit or behind closed doors, backroom deal type of things that the public doesn't always know about, even if it's legal, is that lots of the involvement can be more upfront and explicit. For example, a country may pass a law that requires money transfers of a certain amount to be audited by an anti-money laundering service. And so when you actually execute a large money transfer, you may, as the parties involved in the transfer, voluntarily include a third party to audit the transaction. And by doing so, we can still accomplish the legal things that we need, but still it's more upfront and explicit, and under the acknowledgement and the control of the people who are involved there. Now, certainly there are people that can choose to not involve them, but there's some ways to audit for the people that are doing that now that are not very dissimilar from the things that happen today. I think that the involvement of multiple parties in a transaction is one of the other really powerful things that I didn't have in my slides about DIDComm, but it's incredibly important. HTTP is fundamentally client server, and DIDComm messaging can involve multiple parties simultaneously in a really powerful way. We have the beginnings of that now, and there are future features that I hope to promote as time goes on that will enable robust multi-party communication in a protocol that will help with all those sorts of scenarios. Steve, you have a really good point in the chat, right? Protocols can successfully operate with a lower critical mass than platforms, which need to pay for large infrastructure. If you are developing something that utilizes a protocol, either of community use or of your own design, you're not paying the hosting infrastructure for the platforms. You're simply enabling the facilitation of that. And if your company or your service is providing a piece of that interaction, you're only actually paying for the piece of the interaction that you're involved with, not the operation of the entire thing. And that's really important. There's a much lower operational capital required in order to participate in the protocol than there is to host an entire platform. Did I do that justice, Steve, or is there deeper comments there?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah. Other comments or questions? Did I share any insight useful today, even if you've been in the industry for a while? Or am I really preaching to the choir and everyone already understands and believes all these concepts and I'm the last guy to sort of speak about them?
No, I think we need to talk more about the high level stuff. I think we're consistently getting entangled in technical discussions, and we forget that most people don't understand what this stuff, never even heard of this stuff. So I think we've constantly, I mean, we'll need to do this again in 6 months.
Maybe I'll have better
slides. Just for a reminder that, this is what we're about. This is why we're doing this. But I do think, I mean, I think it's interesting to, I think we have to develop messaging around the value proposition of this that aligns with a lot of different use cases and viewpoints about how the world should be structured, the digital world should be structured.
I hope that as our technological advancement improves, that our vision will improve with it. Meaning we can always see future things now more clearly because of the progress that we've made in the technical sense. You know, we've demonstrated some relatively simple things in Bifold today. As we gain more features there, being able to stand on top of that and look further into the future is exciting to me. And I think that we'll gain a better understanding of what is likely to succeed, or what we need the most, or what will make the biggest impact in the advancement of this stuff.
There's probably one issue, although we've only got a couple of minutes left. There's one issue that where this is likely going to, you know, sort of drive the protocol, is the Internet of Things. The robots are going to need identities, even if they're not going to be very interesting identities.
Absolutely. I think there's a number of things that we are unable to realize right now, solely because we don't have the technological architecture to make them happen. There's a number of things, for example, in package logistics, that are held back by the fact that package logistics are generally a platform, not a protocol. And so integrating those sorts of things, I think, can massively improve what we're doing in the future. So I think when we, you know, back when the internet was new, it was not just a new way to buy books, right, or a new way to find online interest groups about something. It gradually expanded to touch nearly every area of our lives, and I believe that done properly, this will be the same thing. Is that this will touch all areas of our lives, and there will end up being improvements in new abilities that we gain in ways that we had not anticipated because of how much this is being leveraged to provide those technologies. Awesome. We are about out of time. Maya, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Sam, James. Yes, we are out of time now. I would like to discuss about next meetup in August. Next one is going to be August 24th, Tuesday, same time, 12 Eastern. And we are finalizing the candidate for speakers. And if you're interested in suggesting some topics, please feel free to email me at maya@indicio.tech. Thank you again, everyone, for coming today, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Bye.